Welcome back to Ideas at Work and Beyond. Just a thought. When I think of democracy and our form of government, government for, by, and of the people, you need candidates, you need citizens that are going to be willing to run. This evening we have the pleasure of having John Hartwell and Tony Boucher here to talk about some of the issues that affect the people in the 26th State Senate District in Connecticut. And I personally just want to thank them for having the guts to get out there in front of all you people, to go to the fairs, to go to the church picnics, to go to the town hall meetings, to listen to what your concerns are, and then to try to attempt to represent you in Hartford. So before we do anything, I just want to thank both these candidates for having the guts to run. But first, I'd just like everyone to meet John Hartwell. Now, probably everyone has already met you and knows, but tell us a little bit about you, and if you could, just briefly say why you are running for State Senate.
Well, thanks, Marty. I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and to appear with Tony. We've been in one short debate before. This is our second time, and I look forward to doing a lot more as we go through the campaign. I'm running because I think that there are some very deep problems in Connecticut that we need to be addressing. On the surface here in Fairfield County, things look pretty good, and most of the people here are reasonably well off. But in fact, if we look deeper, there are problems in this state that need to be addressed. Their job growth over the last 15, 20 years has been very, very low. Median house prices have gotten way beyond the median income. And we're in a situation where if we don't grow, if we don't create new jobs, if we don't have opportunities for the people who are living here, then we're going to fall further and further behind. And so I think that there are things that we need to be looking at that are very deep in the economy.
Let me just ask you one question. Give me a little bit of your background. You're married, your wife has an interesting job. Just real quickly.
I have been in business for over 35 years. Graduated from Yale with a management degree in business. I'm a former banker. I was a vice president at Chase. I've lived around the world. I'm a management consultant now. And I do business with some of the Fortune 100 companies.
We were talking before, you actually worked in Iran for some time.
I worked in several countries in the Middle East back in the 70s and the 80s before I went to business school. And then since that time, I've lived here in the United States. So I've been here in the New England area for the last 20 years. And I have done a lot of the things that the rest of us do. I've been a coach, and I'm a father, and I worked in the community, and I've commuted to New York. I've done, I think I'm pretty typical.
Okay. We're going to have lots of time to get into your policies and on your issues and so forth. I just want people a chance to get to know you just a little bit. All right. Tony Boucher.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us. Give us a little biographical sketch of yourself. Briefly, hit the high notes.
Well, I actually came to this country when I was 5 years old from Italy.
You weren't born in America? You were born in Italy?
I was. My parents were farmers, and I had to learn English as a second language, so I have an interesting viewpoint when it comes to English as a second language, bilingual education, as well as the immigration issue. And went to school in Connecticut in the Naugatuck Valley, and went on to college from there, and also married a gentleman. We will be married 38 years on August the 8th in 2008. So a lot of eights on there. We have 3 children, one of which we just married 2 weeks ago, our daughter. Our oldest son has 3 children himself. We are grandparents, and we have a younger son as well. They all went to Georgetown University, and my daughter went to graduate school at Duke. During that time, I've been also in the business sector myself. I have an MBA from UConn as well as a Series 7 in '63. I've been and have been working in the financial services industry, and have had also a couple of small businesses of my own, as well as have been a consultant in addition to those things. And so I bring a little bit of the business world to the General Assembly, which is sorely needed right now.
Briefly, why are you running for State Senate?
Well, I'll tell you.
And then we're going to get into our questions, so move it along. Here we go.
Well, thank you for asking that, Marty.
Sure.
I've spent 22 years of experience in elective office. The first 10 in Wilton as selectman and Board of Education chair. The last 12 as state representative. I've also actually served on the State Board of Education dealing with the problems of our major cities. I work and have worked, as you heard, for many years in the financial services industry. As state rep, my job has always been to be accessible to my constituents, listen to their concerns, and get results on the issues that are important to them. I have worked hard to learn the legislative process and to build relationships in Hartford and in all of our state agencies. I've worked on many issues that are shared concerns for the 7 towns in the 26th district, like power lines, cell towers, superhighways, mass transit, and open space. And I think my track record shows that I've been successful in a lot of these areas we just talked about. I think I also want to mention right now that the reason I'm running is that the Democrats have controlled our legislature for 30 out of the last 34 years, and more Connecticut is moving in a negative direction. To many of our best people, our best businesses are now leaving the state, and state government has actually becoming the largest employer. Today it seems like Connecticut residents are working for the government, not the other way around as it should. So we have a lot to do. We need to lower taxes, the cost of living, improve transportation, protect our environment, open space, conserve, have energy from alternative sources, strengthen our education, and provide incentives to businesses. And so as senator, I'm planning to fight for those changes, and also because it is the state that I grew up in, it's the state where I live and was educated, and it's a state that I love, and I feel it's my duty actually to serve and protect it. And that's why I'm running.
Well, good. Okay, couple ground rules. I have, at great expense to myself, purchased a chess timer here. You know, like chess players? This is an idea I came up with. So we're going to keep very close track of how much time each candidate has a chance to talk. Tony, in the talking department, you're way ahead. You're going to have to bring up the rear on that. We want this to be a integrated participation. So there's going to be a phone number. It's 792-4101. 792-4101. We'll scroll it there. And then also, if the lines are jammed, you can email in. Right here on my BlackBerry, we'll pose the questions to the candidates there, as well as we've done some pre-interviewing of men on the street, women on the street that have some questions as well. But I'm going to start with the first question. We're going to go to Mr. Hartwell first. You'll have 2 minutes to answer, and then you'll have a minute to rebut.
Okay.
My question to you is, because gasoline taxes, I had a bit of a mental breakdown on this very show. It had to do with Caribou and drilling in Anwar. But my question is, it cost me $100 to fill up my tank of gas. What can we do at the state level? We were looking at it beforehand. Connecticut has one of, if not the highest, maybe California's higher, state taxes on gasoline. What can we do to limit the increase in these prices in gas, and as it relates to the gross receipt tax?
Well, the gross receipts tax was put in place to help fund the transportation system that we need to have in this state. Mm-hmm. As you may know, in the legislature a couple of years ago has passed the money to buy another 300 rail cars for Metro North, $2 million apiece. And we have an option for another 80 of those as well. And these are sorely needed for the Metro North, the main line. Unfortunately, we didn't at the same time do anything for the Danbury line, and that still needs to be done. So the gross receipts tax was put in place in order to fund that transportation infrastructure. And actually, this was a program that was put forward by Governor Rell and supported by the state legislature in a bipartisan way. And I think you voted for that, Tony. So we need to collect the taxes in order to fund our transportation needs. Now, unfortunately, when the legislature did put this in place, they didn't make sure that all of the money was going to go for transportation. So some of it's going into the general fund. And actually, I would like to see that changed. I would like to see transportation funded by the taxes that we collect on gasoline. And if we don't need the money, then I think we should refund it. We also need to look at the people at the low end of the economic scene, people who don't have money and who need to drive to work, find that gas prices are a problem for them. But rather than reducing the taxes directly on gasoline, I would rather see giving those people who work, who file income taxes, and who own cars, I'd rather see them give a rebate to people who are in trouble. And the reason why I don't want to simply reduce the taxes is because there are a lot of people who drive through Connecticut on our turnpikes, on I-84 and on I-95, the truckers and the people going up to New England. And I don't see any reason why we should subsidize their gasoline.
Let me just ask a question. This isn't taking from your time, but The gross receipt tax, I was doing a little research on this. At this point, 16% of that tax is going into the general budget,
Right.
not related to
Right.
improving transportation.
Right.
And in addition to that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the gross receipt tax is a percentage of the total. So if gasoline prices go up, that tax goes up on top of it.
That's right.
Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but to begin with, Connecticut already has the highest, we were looking at it before, one of the highest taxes,
Yep.
but that's a stagnant tax. That doesn't progressively go up as gasoline prices go up, but that's why we're paying upwards of 70 cents on every dollar, or 70 cents on every gallon of gas.
I think you need
taxes.
to remember that tax actually is a tax on the companies that sell the gasoline. It's not a gas tax at the pump, so it's not added directly on. And companies can pass it on, or they can not pass it on, depending on what the market is doing. And we should talk also about market conditions and what the gas companies are doing. I think you're well aware that ExxonMobil had the highest profits of any company.
$11.2
billion in a quarter. It's extraordinary how much money these guys are making. So, I think one of the things we actually need to do is to look at the oil companies and not just at the gross receipts tax.
Okay. You have a minute to rebut.
Oh, I certainly do. Just a minute. I don't know if I can get it all in.
Go right ahead.
I'd like to correct a few things, though, that were just mentioned. That gross receipt tax wasn't originally an excess profit tax, but going to court, it was shown that it was perfectly acceptable for that to be passed on to the consumer. So we are the ones that carry that brunt. And unfortunately, we had to carry the Democrats kicking and screaming to this issue this session because they didn't even want to address a new increase in that petroleum receipts tax, which is a percentage tax. And I must correct this. That special petroleum tax was originally set up to help pay for cleaning up leaking underground storage tanks, a program that has long gone, I might add, and yet that tax has gone up from 5% to 7%, and it was going to go up to 7.5%. Unfortunately, the Democrats prevented us from capping that on a lower amount of gas that it is scheduled to be applied to. And for that reason, I think we need to readdress this, have a special session, and actually address this at its core. There are so many other, and you're absolutely right, we are the highest, second highest gas tax in the country, and and especially given that these taxes are not going to the source where it should go, and that is to our transportation fund. As you said, note of this year's $17.6 billion budget, $135 million of this was transferred from the gas tax into the general fund and was not used for transportation projects at all. But again, remember, the Democrats control the legislature 30 out of the last 34 years, and they direct where this money is going.
Okay. That's one thing we didn't mention, I think, in your biographical sketch. You have been a state representative
for the last 12 years. That's correct. Okay. And I sit on the Appropriations Committee, the Transportation Committee, the Education Committee, and the Higher Education Committee.
Okay. Caller, thanks for joining us. You're on the air.
Yes, I wanted to ask Tony Boucher why she is continually voting against ethics reform in a state which has had a good bit of difficulty, and a number of bills have been presented, and each time she seems to vote no.
Okay, thank you for the call.
May I answer that?
You may absolutely answer that.
I think that there's been a misrepresentation.
You have 2 minutes to answer that.
Well, the ethics bill
we're 3 for 3 with governors in the Northeast here. You have New Jersey having trouble, New York had a little bit of trouble, and we had a little bit of trouble here.
Absolutely.
In fact, ethics, it seems like...
Ethics is huge, and in fact, I think the public deserves...
Ethics is big.
It's very big.
Okay.
The public deserves representatives that they can trust. There's no question. That's why back in... when we were having trouble with our then governor, I was the first one in my legislative caucus to actually call for the governor to step down and leave office.
I don't mean to interrupt, but the caller seems to indicate you've been voting against these ethics reforms.
Well, that's misinformation, because there was a large ethics bill that would have taken away the pensions of corrupt employees and or elected officials. And what happened was the bill that passed in the Senate included all state employees, including the elected officials. However, when it came down to the House, the Democrats decided to change it and have it only apply to elected officials. And they would have excused the vast number of state employees from this, because the unions put a lot of pressure to exclude them. And we said, no, that is not fair. That is an unethical ethics bill. And we waited until that provision was taken out and would be applied to everyone, and that's when I voted for the bill, when it became an ethics bill.
Okay.
All right,
How do you rebut an ethics bill?
Unethical.
Oh, it was unethical, but when it became
became
ethical,
ethical.
then she ethically voted for it. Your thoughts?
There have been a series of ethical bills since Governor Rowland resigned, and starting with campaign finance reform, 2005, you voted against that. The clean contracting in 2007, I think you voted against that. And, you know, the ethics reform bill, the thing that I looked at, I thought you had voted against it as well. So
No, not at all.
Okay.
In fact, I think this is...
Hold on. He's got a minute. Go ahead.
Yep, go ahead.
Well, I think that when we had a problem, we've had several problems in the state government. It's not just Republicans, obviously. It's not just John Rowland.
That's true.
We've had problems in our cities, and we need to make sure that people who have broken the law don't get pensions, and I firmly believe in that. And I think that we have made great strides with the campaign finance reform and taking special interest money out, and I'm pretty sure you voted against that one.
No, actually.
You'll have a chance to rebut. Go ahead.
Okay. So, go ahead.
Well, I think there's a lot of misinformation that is coming out, and that's probably what gives politics a bad name.
Okay, you
know?
voted against an ethics reform, you
Which I
voted
didn't.
against campaign finance
It's
reform, and you're
interesting.
kind of a low-down, rotten person
I
because
must
you're not
be.
for ethics. You have 20 seconds to rebut
Well,
that.
obviously, this is what gives politics a bad name. They're getting information that is not true. For one thing, I did vote for the ethics bill. I was one of the folks on our side that actually voted for that campaign finance bill. And I have to tell you that what happens oftentimes in negative campaigning, people take votes out of context and don't look at what the ultimate bill that was passed that we did sign. But a lot of those bills you're talking about, like clean contracting, wasn't about clean contracting. It was about protecting state jobs. And there are many, many components of a bill. And in there are things called RATs, which are bad language in there that make that bill not supportable. And once that's cleaned out, then the bill does become supportable, and that's what we pay. I hope that this campaign is not going to move into a manipulation of the real facts.
Okay. Caller, you're on the air. Thank you for calling.
Hey, good evening, Marty. I had a question for the candidates about residential real estate property tax caps. New York State just passed a law on that, and I know they've been mentioning taxes here this evening, so I'm a senior citizen, and I'm on a fixed income, and I'm hoping to stay in my home for a long period of time. But, you know, with the tightened budgets and upcoming, heating oil season coming up on top of the gasoline and all the other stuff, I'm just wondering if, and I'm not asking for a rebate on property taxes or any kind of...
But at least keep a lid on them is what you're saying.
Yeah, something like that.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the call. What do you think? Real estate taxes, can we put a lid on it? Is there anything you can do in Hartford?
Well, you know, Governor Rowell proposed it this past year. It didn't go anywhere. And I think that the municipalities fought back very hard about that, because if you put a cap on the property taxes, but you don't put a cap on health care costs, for example, or fuel costs that are going out the roof, then what's going to happen at the end of the day is that you're going to have to take money away from policemen and from fire and from schools, because the only way that the towns have to support themselves is through the property taxes. Now, I think that we are too dependent on property taxes. I think 39% of the taxes that we collect in the state are property taxes, and we're the highest property tax state for anyone that has also an income tax. So we actually need to look at the entire tax structure and to see what we can do to remedy this. And simply putting a cap on property taxes without addressing other needs, I think, would be wrong. One of the things that's driving the property taxes is the need for schools. And here in Ridgefield and in Wilton and in Westport and in Reading, we have great schools, and they're funded by the property taxes. And one of the big problems that we're facing there is special education. And the cost of special education is going through the roof. And in Tony's town in Wilton, I think there are 450 kids in special education out of it's almost 10% of the population. And it's a very expensive proposition. I think that the state should actually take over the funding for special education directly. We should collect taxes at the state level for special education and spend it at the local level, so we could give everyone an even share of the tax money for special education and hold down property taxes that way. But I think that a property tax cap simply by itself over the long run will be very, very bad for our schools. And if you look at California, which did that 30 years ago, they went from Proposition 13, I think it was, yeah. They went from having one of the best public school systems in the country to one that barely functions today, and so it's a real problem. Property taxes are a huge problem, but we can't just put a cap on them.
I think that overall there's this, what you call the law of unintended consequences. And people look at their real estate taxes and they say, my gosh, what can we do? Who's a politician that's going to say, yeah, we're going to cap this, it's going to be great. But like you said, I have friends that live in California, and they're running the schools 6 days a week. They can't build new schools.
Right.
It's overcrowded. They're running the schools in shifts. It's pretty tough.
Right.
But anyways, yeah, a minute to rebut.
Well, there's a lot of issues with regards to property tax. One of the ways that we can reduce it is by taking away the property tax on cars. We're one of the only of 2 states in the country that still puts a property tax on cars. In fact, we were having our debate, and Lucy Arnaz was at the radio show that we were at, and she mentioned the fact that she was very surprised and annoyed, actually, that we have a property tax on cars. Many of the proposals that are just being presented here have been put out by the Republican Party for years and have been fought repeatedly and stonewalled by the Democratic majority that is there. One of the frustrations, I think, is that we have a tax structure right now, an education cost-sharing formula, that is so complex and redirects the funds of these communities that we represent here into the major cities. And it practically fully funds them. But we are not getting the return on investment in those cities because the educational systems haven't improved, and we're not getting the kind of graduates that we had intended for that. So we do need to take a look at it, and I think working together, we should find a different way to do this. I'm sure that Governor Rell proposed this because it's, quite frankly, if there was a threat of such a cap, the actual negotiated settlements that are being had in each town might be tempered somewhat. That may have been the plan. I've negotiated a lot of contracts in many of our schools, and I can tell you that it is a very difficult process. We have binding arbitration, and typically the decision goes to the labor side versus management, so it drives up the cost, and we're getting less and less. So we are self-funding ourselves. But I might add, you know, when you
don't add too much because
well, I'll
the clock's ticking.
I'll tell you, we actually get a lot more for our buck when we are directing those funds locally. When we send money to the state, we get very little back, whereas at least in our local communities, we have some control through our elected officials.
The 26 state senators.
I'd like to say a couple more things
quickly,
here.
Go ahead.
The first is that when Governor Rell proposed the cap on the taxes, one of the things that I felt most deeply about was that she was going to take away local control of the schools and local control of taxes by putting on a cap from the state. And you know, we have a tradition here in New England of being able to make our own decisions in town meetings. I mean, I don't think there's anywhere else in the country that has such a strong tradition of people getting together in towns and deciding what it is that they want to tax themselves for and what they want to spend their money for. And a statewide cap directed from Hartford it takes away the opportunity of the local towns. I'd like to also say one other thing. I hear from you, Tony, again and again, the Democrats in Hartford, the Democrats in Hartford. I really believe that we should be able to work together. I think we should be able to find solutions to problems and not simply blame the other side. And so as we go forward, perhaps we can look for ways to solve problems rather than simply play on one team or the other.
Well, we have done that, I might add, John. We do work together repeatedly, and we would never have been able to accomplish what we have, especially in the minority, if we didn't work together with both sides. There's no question. But on the issue of taxes, that is a place where the two parties do differ quite a bit. On issues with regards to the environment, on issues with regards to transportation, and especially on issues with regards to ethics, there's a very bipartisan agreement to move forward. Unfortunately, though, that has changed somewhat. When you lose the veto power, when there's no give and take, and one party dominates the entire agenda, that moves the state and has been moving it in a negative direction.
There are two parties up there, and the governor, since 1995, has been a Republican, And so anything that gets signed off on is basically bipartisan. And in some of those years as well, there have been Republican majorities in one of the houses or the other. So,
No, John, there has not been. I'm afraid I have to correct you on that. That's not true. When we did make some very good changes in both welfare reform and our tax structure, we started to eliminate the estate tax. We did have some measure of compromise on the Senate side. But since we've lost that ability to have a veto power in the executive branch, all of those policies have shifted and have changed. And in fact, it appears that it might change even more if the majority speaker now becomes the new Speaker of the House. He is a union organizer. That's his profession. I work with him. You notice I've been there for the last 12 years. I worked with him on the Labor Committee. And for 4 of those years, all I saw were very negative anti-business bills that were being put through. And lately, more and more of those are coming actually to the floor of the House, like the supposed clean contracting bill, which was not that at all, but a very anti-business bill.
Wow.
Okay, let me just move on. We have another caller. Caller, you're on the air?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, you're on the air. Would you like to pose a question?
This question is primarily from Mr. Hartwell, and I'd like to have Mrs. Brochet also comment. The Democrats control our state assembly and our state senate, and we have the second highest tax state in the nation, according to the Wall Street Journal. I want to know what you're going to do to cut back on state spending. We're losing population because of this, and I'd like to know how you, Mr. Hartwell, would like to handle this.
Just out of curiosity, if we're number 2, who's number 1?
Pardon me?
Who's the number 1 most taxed state in the union?
I don't know.
But we're number 2.
Yeah.
Cold comfort. Thank you very much. Let's put that to Mr. Hartwell. Mr. Hartwell?
Well, the budget definitely needs to be looked at, and especially in the coming year when we're looking at tax shortfalls next year of perhaps $150 million. And so we need to look very carefully at all the programs that are up there and to see where we can cut back. But at the same time, we need to invest. If we look at the reason why we're losing population in Connecticut, it's primarily in the 25 to 35-year-old category. And those people are primarily the college-educated group who are leaving. And the ones who are staying behind are working in low-wage jobs and don't have any opportunity to move up. At the same time, since 1990, we've had virtually no job growth in the state. And
since 1990, we had no job growth. Hold on.
Excuse me, 1990 to 2005, we have averaged 0.1% in job growth over that time frame. Now, those are numbers you can look up. And in the same time frame, we have actually lost, there are fewer businesses today in the state than there were in 1989. So in the booming 90s, when the rest of the country was moving forward, this state was not. And the opportunities for people to get jobs and to move up are not there. We are very much dependent on financial services industry, especially in Fairfield County. Too dependent on financial services. We have a real strategic Achilles heel there. And if what happens to the banking system in this country, if what could have happened and what still might happen, could have very negative impact on the state as a whole and on our tax receipts. So we actually have to take a very close look at how we grow our businesses here, how we invest in the future, and how we spend our money.
And not be too dependent on one industry.
And not be too dependent on one industry, absolutely.
To the caller's point, Tax Freedom Day by state, 2008. There are 50 states in the union. It designates at what point in your year have you worked hard enough and long enough to pay the government, state, federal, and local government? And out of 50 states, Connecticut ranks as the absolute latest. Absolutely. May 8th. So from January 1 until May 8th, you get up and go to work every day, and that goes to pay for your state, federal, and local taxes. Now, we talked about this a little bit. You said that Connecticut's a wealthy town, and the federal government, the federal tax is a big portion of, it's proportionally larger. The point is, Connecticut pays a lot of taxes. I think that's what the caller was talking about. Thank you for your response. You have a minute to rebut.
Well, I think that we took a turn for the worst, actually, when the state income tax was put in place and made Connecticut no longer a real competitive place for people to live. And at the same time that that tax was put in place, all of the other taxes that we had were not eliminated.
A lot of them were.
Well, we still have the sales tax, we have licensure taxes, we have costs that are through the ceiling. We started, by the way, to try to reduce some of the business taxes like the unemployment insurance and workers' comp problems that we had that made us uncompetitive as a state. And we actually were turning the corner, but unfortunately these have all been reinstituted and have been we couldn't certainly solve this problem if we did do the things that we definitely need to do, such as to reduce or eliminate the estate tax, take the cliff off. This is something that repeatedly the majority does not want to deal with unless we start up some other type of entitlement programs, which just adds to the cost. The growth in the numbers of folks that are employed at the state level is gotten considerably higher. Again, it is a very bad dynamic when the single largest employer is the state of Connecticut. That's not a healthy situation to be in. And we did have certainly healthy clusters, but that has narrowed substantially and had made us uncompetitive. And I think it is because the financial policies that have been pursued as of late have been very negative for the state. The good news is, in a bipartisan way, we have, as a minority party, helped to make some changes in the last couple of years that I think have been somewhat helpful, at least to stem the growth of the cost of state government. When we do need to keep those young folks still here, and they will point to things such as the high taxes and certainly the high home costs and so forth. We have a few proposals that we have on the table that I think we might get some folks on the other side to join with us next session. They've entertained some of those. One of their great experiments was the film tax. The film tax credit that they experimented with, which I joined into.
People are coming in and shooting movies
I've
in
actually
Connecticut.
testified along with the current speaker to promote that, because I've also promoted tax credits in research and development for high-tech industries. They work very, very well, and so hopefully that will spur them to rethinking eliminating those from the past.
Can I?
Yes, by all means.
The major issue for companies when they relocate is not taxes. It's a workforce that's prepared to work, and a transportation system that's prepared to get people there. And you can look at study after study and see that. And if you look at a state like North Carolina, which is not as rich as Connecticut is by any means, they spend more than 3 times per capita on their community college system than we do. They've got programs where they closely link up what a company needs with the students who are going through. They'll actually buy equipment from the same supplier and train people on equipment so that when a company wants to relocate there, they'll have people prepared to go to work. We need to have investment in our community college system that will prepare our kids who are now working at low-wage jobs, give them jobs that they can make money at, and at the same time we need also to invest in green energy, in alternative energy, in green-collar jobs. We need to use the firepower of UConn and Yale and develop an economy here that will move us forward.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because education is something that you and I can probably agree on very well, as I've worked in that area for a long time at every level of governance, at the local board level, at the state level, and certainly now on the Higher Education Committee of the Legislature. In fact, I even put my money where my mouth is and donate to these institutions, including our community colleges that do the bulk of the work that we have. There is no question. The good news is it is one of the places where we have the largest competitive advantage. We're number 5 now versus in business development, we're number 39 or 40. But that is one place that we are still getting it right. We do have a good workforce. But if you canvass Connecticut business and industry in Connecticut, they will tell you that is no longer the top priority. The top priority is the cost of energy for businesses, it's the cost of doing business here, and it's the regulations that have just grown over that period of time.
Okay, your intrepid reporter and his courageous cameraman went out onto the street to interview folks on the street, and they've come up with some questions, and I think we have them. And like that sports announcer, let's go to the videotape, but we do need the volume, if we can have the volume here. These are questions from people. Okay, we're here with Urban Wilkins, and Urban, what question do you have for the candidates?
Yes, I'd like to know what there can be done about the gas prices and the gas tax of the state and illegal aliens. I mean, I know everybody comes to America to make a better life for themselves, and that's fine, but, you know, let's do it the right way, you know what I'm saying? And they're driving with no license, no insurance. you hit the card and your insurance got to fix it. You know, it's things like that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We'll put it to the candidates. Thank you. Yes, we're here with Rose. And Rose, you have a question for the candidates?
Yes, I do. I'd like to see the taxes go down on the gas and the prices of the taxes and everything. You know, it's very high. Okay. It's hard for the working people, you know. We can't keep up with everything, you know, so that's about it.
Thank you. Well, you do know that the... Okay, well, there you have it. The first questioner had a question about the gasoline prices and also illegal aliens. What are we doing and what can we do at the state level regarding that whole issue? And where do you stand on that issue? It's a very hot issue.
It is a hot issue. And first of all, we should address the gasoline issue. As I've already said, we did actually bring everyone into special session to at least stem the tide of the increasing cost and the taxes. But those are just short-term solutions right now. We could also cap the, as we talked about before, the gross receipts tax. But there's also some long-term solutions, and a lot of it has to do with developing alternative energy sources. The Connecticut could take the lead on fuel energy and fuel cell technology, solar, wind, and other types of alternatives, because we already are now starting to invest in those. And we actually have two towns. The town of Canton that is planning to harness their dam for hydroelectric. We have the city of Naugatuck that wants to actually pursue all four of those areas to make it an industry for them. So there are some long-term, but the short-term solutions is actually getting more supply. And I think more and more people are coming to that point. As far as illegal immigration is concerned, obviously there's much wrong with the federal immigration laws that we have today. Because
are you in favor of ICE coming into Danbury and these other regions?
Well, I think the laws need to be reviewed and changed on a federal level, but I think right now we have laws, and therefore we should support those laws. How do we pick and choose in this country what laws we should abide by and which don't? When I came over to this country as a legal immigrant, my father...
How old were you at that age?
I was 5.
Okay, so you didn't really have a lot of input in it. You did it legally.
But we did it legally,
Okay.
but I also have a copy of the ship's log that said that my father had to have a sponsor and a job. And so both of those requirements before he can get in. He had to have that job and he had to have a sponsor.
Mr. Hartwell, the man on the street, these were random questions. His biggest concerns were the price of gas, which we touched on a little bit, and also illegal aliens. What's your stand on that? It's an interesting issue.
The price of gas is controlled by the supply and demand, as we all know.
And some state taxes, though.
State taxes is a minor part of it. The major,
70 cents a gallon.
The major part of it is supply and demand. And what we've seen in the last few days, in fact, is that the demand has come down. And it comes down whenever prices go up. What we need actually is a stability in the gas prices so that people can plan. And I hope it's at a level that will encourage investment in alternative energy, because alternative energy is clearly the way we've got to go. In this country, we use 20% of the world's oil, and we only have 3% of the world's supply. So there is no way that we can drill ourselves out of this problem. There are not enough sources of supply in the United States for us to be able to supply ourselves. So we need to move to alternative energy, and we need to do it as soon as we possibly can. We actually made some progress in the 1970s and early 80s. In fact, oil, if you adjust for inflation, was over $100 a barrel in 1980.
Yeah. I have some graphs on that, as a matter of fact.
And then it came down. But when it was high, people started to make some other decisions, and we're doing that today. People are driving less, and there's a lot of pain. But the pain is relatively short-term. The gain is long-term if we can move to alternative energy. So we absolutely have to do that. And we need to put the resources of the state behind that in every way possible. So conservation is important. Hybrids are important. Green building is important. Over 40% of the energy costs go through buildings, so we need to be able to reduce the cost of running a building, and so we need to help people do all of those things. In terms of immigration, you just said the federal laws are a mess. I would absolutely agree with you. That's the case. And what is the concern here at the state level? And I think this concern at the state level are things that we control, like driver's licenses and insurance We need to make sure that people are properly equipped to drive cars. If they're going to be here and driving a car, I want somebody to have insurance. I don't want people not having insurance. I don't want people driving a car who shouldn't be driving a car.
Would you be in favor of the folks that aren't citizens getting Connecticut licenses?
I want people who drive cars to be doing it safely, and I want them to have insurance. And I want people who see a problem that should be reported to the police to have the confidence that they can report something to the police. I don't want people hiding in the shadows. The answer goes back to the federal government and fixing the immigration problem.
No, but it's a Connecticut issue regarding driver's license.
The Connecticut issue is to make sure that people who are driving cars have licenses and have insurance.
Okay, just hold on, because I want to get a short answer, and then we have a backlog of callers, so we want to go through them really quick. Hold on, that's my show. I get to decide. Are you in favor of not having proof of citizenship to get a Connecticut state license? Yes or no? It's okay to answer
no,
yes
I'm
or
not
no.
in favor of that.
Okay.
No, I'm not in favor of...
Are you in favor of that? Yeah, yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Nor
okay.
in-state
Your
tuition.
concern is, though, like this random man on the street is saying, what about all these unlicensed drivers? They don't have insurance, and it's wreaking havoc on our road. There must be some way to control this.
There's a new federal law that says that you can't get a driver's license without proper identification. And so people bring the identification, they get licenses. I want to make sure they have licenses.
Okay. Okay, we'll have to leave it at that. We have a backlog of callers, so I want to go to a speed dial calling. Let's go through these and let's have quick answers. Here we go. Caller, I'm sorry for the delay. Do you have a question?
Marty, hi, it's Frank. Excellent show.
Thank you.
Excellent show. Burning the switchboards down.
You know, this is terrible because I have two long-winded politicians. Now I got a long-winded caller. You're killing me here. Get to the point, Frank.
Candidates. Listen,
I'm just kidding.
We have these high taxes. John, your Democrat legislator buddies have turned this into the most hostile state for working-class people. Why? Because you created the highest taxes in the country. All right. The reason why we have the highest taxes in the country because
Frank, you got 10 seconds to get to the point.
Hired 60,000 state employees. Most of them do nothing. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, Bureau of Latino Affairs.
Okay, so we got a bloated state government. Okay, I got it. What he's trying to say is we're spending way too much money, and there was some right-wing rhetoric mixed in there as well. Bloated state government, give me 30 seconds on that.
Well, we do have waste, but we have terrific employees, and we do have great agencies that do some good work when we call on them to help us out. But a lot of times it's hard to get through that, and there is some excess that can be removed. We have 4,000 that want to take advantage of an early retirement proposals that we put out there for
Give
them.
it to them.
That's the right.
Do
we
more
want to
with
give
less.
it to them.
30
Absolutely.
seconds on bloated state government.
I really hate it when people attack people who work for the government. People who work for the government are there to do a job. 99% of them are good, honest people. They come in, they do their work, they go home, they do what they're asked of them, and I think it's really unfortunate when people say to the people who are serving us every day are somehow not worthy of being in their jobs or working for us. This is an attitude that I'm sorry. It really upsets me.
I'm going to give you Frank's email address. You can have direct conversation with him. I'm joking. All right, I appreciate it. All right, let's call. You're on the air. Sorry for
I'm here.
Yes, you're on the air.
Oh, good. I'd like to maybe address this to Mr. Hartwell. We were just talking about the taxes on gasoline. Connecticut has the highest state tax in the country. And the Democrats have put through the gas tax as a percentage of the cost of the gas. So as the cost of fuel goes up, the states get more and more taxes. And that's, I think, the major cause of the retail price being so high. I try to buy gasoline anytime I can out of state. I recently was up in Massachusetts, and it was 50 cents a gallon less than Connecticut.
Okay, I got it.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, on Route 33 between Ridgefield and Katona, there's a mobile station right across the line, and I go gas up there. It's wall-to-wall Connecticut plates gassing up there. 30 seconds on the high cost of fuel.
One of the problems we have in Connecticut is what's called zone pricing. The gas companies divide the state up into zones, and they look and see how much money people have in those zones, and then they adjust the prices accordingly.
Shell, the British Petroleum, they all are in cahoots, and they all say the
I don't want to say that they're all in cahoots because that would be illegal, but there is zone pricing, and we need to get rid of it.
Well, the proposal to eliminate it has failed many, many times in Hartford.
Don't tell me, the dreaded Democrats.
No, no, I'm not saying that.
Oh, okay,
what I'm saying is that there's not there's now an understanding that if you would eliminate zone pricing, what you would do is raise the cost in Bridgeport and lower it in New Canaan. You would not change the overall cost because they're not going to lose money on it. They're just going to redistribute it in a different way. So is that conscionable to do that as well?
All right, let's go to the next caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Marty.
Yes.
I got a question for a couple of your guests there.
Well, they're right here.
Okay. How do they feel about the state of Connecticut taxing the veterans on their pension?
Oh, it's
Oh, my.
great
Good
issue.
question.
Thank you
Thanks.
for that, because I
Go ahead.
actually have had a proposal in the legislature for the last 4 years or greater to eliminate the taxes on pensions. We doubled tax people, both on the estate tax, on their real estate when they're leaving. There was even a proposal to tax them when they were buying rather than just selling. And let me tell you, this is an unconscionable pension tax. We should eliminate it, and those proposals should pass both the House and Senate, and I think both sides should do that equally.
I would agree.
I'm feeling the love. There's harmony there when it comes to the veterans. We have a couple viewers that emailed in. One question is, this is for the question, it says, one of the things representatives are asked to do is to help their constituents with problems. In nearly 12 years to date in the State Assembly, how has Representative Boschee handled, excuse me for killing your name, handled the problems brought to her by her constituents?
Very few people know that at least 2/3 of the job that we have is about constituent services. It's not really about making laws. We just have lawmaking for a third or fourth of the year. But most of the year, and including last week and the week before, I've had myriad of phone calls from people that need help. It takes a long while to understand the process and to get to know the agencies and the people there to actually cut through the red tape, so to speak. Just last week I was able to get a young student a scholarship that she missed out on because of some glitches in the process. A week before that we got a couple in tune with the Department of Social Services when they had a very serious psychiatric illness within their family. And a week before that we were able to get someone's insurance denial overturned, as well as having a company actually, even though they didn't need to.
And I believe there was a cat in a tree, and you went up and got the cat out at the same time.
Marty, it isn't actually a joking matter. It is a very serious issue, and it's a very important part of the job. It doesn't get any actually exposure other than maybe today. This is the first time really anyone's asked me about that. But there are a lot of problems that don't. Those are the kinds of things you do on a daily basis that don't go in the paper and don't get any press.
Constituent service. If you get elected, are you up for it? Are you a service-oriented guy, or are you kind of a Yale MBA that just wants to think about green policies?
When I was vice president in Chase, one of my responsibilities was running customer service for the entire branch system in Manhattan. And so I know how to measure it, I know how to manage it, and I know how to get it done. So customer service, constituent service, it clearly is a very important part of the job, and I feel ready to do it.
Okay. We're going to take one more caller, and then I forgot, we flipped the coin. Who's going to go first with their ending?
Tony.
Tony goes first, and then you go last. That's what we're going to do. We have one more call, and then you both have a minute or so to close out. Caller, you're our last caller. Your question?
Hello, how are you today?
Good.
I just have a quick question in terms of transportation. I think I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people in Ridgeville who use the Metro North, who commute to New York City, that this Ridgeville provides a bus service from Ridgeville to the Harlem line because of the poor service on the rail service in Ridgeville. I'm speaking in regards to the Danbury rail line. We know there's a lot of problems. What would your candidate do in terms of improving the service of the Danbury rail line?
Okay. So, good question. Thank you.
There's a study underway right now to looking at the Danbury line, there's several things under consideration. Electrification is one of them. Extending the line to New Milford is another. There's also some money in a separate project underway to improve the signalization so that they can actually run trains in both directions. That actually should be done in the next 2.5 years, putting in the new signals. That will improve the service, or will allow the service to be improved. I am very much in favor of extending the line to New Milford. I'm not in favor of electrification because I think it costs too much money. But we definitely need to sharply increase both the number of trains, the quality of the trains, and also the parking at the train stations, so that when we have new riders, they'll have a place to park.
On trains, and then if you would, give your closing comment.
Well, I think that, in fact, this is a very important issue for our region. It has been a good thing that Governor Rell finally took over, who had an appreciation and understanding of the issue. It's taken a long while for us that actually advocate for this train line to get an understanding of both sides of the aisle of how important mass transit is to our part of the state. During that period of time, we were able actually to save that Danbury train line from the Budget Act. Someone actually wanted to close it down and put buses there. And since that time, we've gotten more rail parking. We do have some water at some of the stations. We've gotten some changes in schedule, but so much more has to be done. And being a part of that study committee recently is producing some results, we hope, especially with the new head of transportation, Joseph Marie, who is a mass transit expert.
Thank you very much. I want to thank both the candidates for coming in. And I want to apologize to some of the callers. We weren't able to get to all of them, but this has been very healthy and very helpful. Right now, we'd like to have Tony give a short closing statement, and then John. Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you for this evening. It's been very, very helpful to all of us, I think. My priority as state senator would be actually to reverse the negative trend that we're seeing right now in Connecticut, and I'm going to plan to fight for the changes that we need to lower taxes, to create jobs, to preserve our quality of life and improve education and making living here more affordable. That is what the people want. That's their priority that I'm hearing. And I'll do everything possible to ensure that our very best and brightest stay here and that our government works for us, not the other way around. I feel a deep attachment to our state and feel that it's my duty to protect it and to move it forward. And that is why I ran for office in the first place and why I'm running for state senate.
John.
Clearly, we need to work very hard to move this state forward. We need to address the underlying problems of the economy. We need to encourage job growth that has not been happening in the last 15, 20 years, and new businesses. We also have to invest in the transportation system and the education system so that we can move the state forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry to cut you both short. This has been a very enjoyable evening. We'll have to do it again. I wish both of you all the luck in the world. And by all means, please go out and vote. These are fine citizens that are going out there, and I just think they deserve your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you.